Her wedding day began with a lie, not the small kind you whisper to calm nerves, the kind that splits the earth open beneath your feet. Before continuing this wonderful story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. I read every comment of yours, and if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to my channel and keep the notifications. Let's continue. In the village of Omadou, the sun poured gold across the red clay roofs, and everything bloomed like joy had been planted weeks in advance. Drums echoed from distant compounds. The scent of hibiscus and grilled suya danced through the air. Christ, our light chapel, was dressed in white and wealth, its stained glass windows blinking at the rising heat. It should have been perfect. It looked perfect, but perfection lies. Pastor Armour stood at the altar, spine straight but spirit uneasy. His Bible was open, but his soul flipped through a different book, a book of instincts, of tremors in the air. He scanned the rows, faces from the papers, men who signed oil deals, women wrapped in silk, louder than their words, a sea of smiles, perfumes, secrets. And then came the groom. Faye. They called him the boy who returned, the lost prince who found his princess again. His agabada was white as bone, stitched with gold, and his smile could charm thunder from the sky. But his hands betrayed him. They shook when no wind blew. They adjusted a tie that didn't need fixing. They searched the crowd like he expected something to rise. Then the doors opened, and Kem entered, draped in starlight, veiled in grace, the village's own daughter floating toward a promise. And yet when their fingers touched, Pastor Armus felt it. Not joy, not peace, but a chill thin as a blade, slicing through the incense. He whispered only to the altar cloth, "Whatever darkness wears white today, let it stumble before the vow." And somewhere beneath the wedding drums, a crack formed, small, silent, but growing. The four lies wore tuxedos and vows were staged, like theatre. There were two barefoot children under the neem tree, Kem and Faye. She, the chief's daughter, with ribbons in her hair and a laugh like wind chimes. He, the tailor's son, with dust on his knees and dreams scribbled in the sky. They chased lizards, climbed mango trees, and whispered secrets only stars could hold. He gave her a bracelet, red string, no beads, no gold, just memory, tied tight. "We'll never forget each other," he said. She believed him. Then one day he was gone. Not a letter, not a goodbye, just a shuttered window and silence, where laughter used to be. London swallowed him whole. Kem wept for days. She kept the bracelet hidden in a carved calabash, buried under her bed. Over time, she folded the pain into quiet ambition. Business school, boardrooms, becoming a name carved in silver, not mud. Suitors came, none stayed, until on a night when the sky cried and the wind had no direction, her phone blinked with a name from the past. "Faye, is it really you?" he asked. And like fire catching dry wood, everything burned alive again. They met in a quiet cafe near the city gates. She wore no makeup. He wore a shy smile and a borrowed voice from memory. He said he'd searched for years, said his father had caged him abroad, said life had bent him, but never broke the image of her. She melted too quickly. The bracelet returned to her wrist like it had never left. Laughter became long walks. Memories became wine-drenched promise. And one dusk, beneath a jacaranda tree, he knelt with a ring and said, "Let's begin again." She said yes, but the gods don't forget broken promises, and some stories do not return the way they left. The wedding of the year was set. Omidi buzzed with gossip and envy. Tailors lost sleep. Caterers grew rich. Palm wine flowed like rivers from tapped joy. But inside Christ, our light chapel, Pastor Amos was collecting shadows. He said nothing, but his heart stitched doubts like a silent tailor mending spirit. During counseling, he asked gently, What festival did you and Kem always attend as children? Faye laughed, confident. The Yam Festival in April, Pastor. Always in April. Kem nodded, touched by the memory. But April is not yam season. In Omidi the Yam Festival sings in August. Always has. Always will. A slip of memory, or a borrowed answer. Amos smiled, but the shadow in him grew. Another day, a guest joked. You remember Mama Afe? Her Ikara? Heaven in a leaf wrap. Faye chuckled. Her yes, best fried plantain in all of Omidi. The room quieted. Mama Afe never sold plantain, only Ikara. 40 years running. Another crack. Another windless shiver in Amos's bones. And then came the whisper masked, as a request. Pastor, can we skip the speak now, or forever hold your peace past? Sometimes people cause drama. You know. He laughed, but too tightly. His hands clasped too hard. Kem teased. What? Are you hiding a jealous lover? Faye's eyes flashed something wild before he smiled again. Amos leaned into the silence, and heard something words never said. No man of truth fears interruption. No man of truth asks for less truth. He didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He only made a no. And that night, when the bells stopped ringing, and the church went quiet, he knelt on the cold tiles and whispered, If this altar becomes a trap, Lord, let it break before the chains lock shut. 2 days before the wedding, the air in Omidu turned heavy. Not with rain, but with warning. Pastor Amos sat alone in his office, fingers tracing scripture, not to preach, but to find peace. Then came the knock, soft, slow, and final like the footstep of old truth. Come in, he said. An elder entered, stooped, dressed in plain brown robes. His face was the color of earth, carved by time, but his eyes were burning questions. My name is Baba Adebayo, he said, barely louder than breath. I was Fami's uncle. Amos did not blink. That man, the groom. Baba leaned forward, hands trembling. He is not my nephew. The room stiffened. The words coiled in the air. Perhaps time has changed his face, Amos offered, careful not to lead the wind, but Baba shook his head. I know my blood. The man standing beside that girl is not Fami. He looks like him, sounds almost like him, but he is not him. Amos felt it then, the final tug in his spirit, like the last root loosening from dry earth. There is a mark, Baba said, voice nearly gone, behind Fami's right ear, a birthmark shaped like a star. If that man does not carry it, then he wears someone else's skin. And just like that, the truth no longer knocked. It demanded to be let in. Baba rose slowly. I've said my part. May the God of truth guide you now. When he left, Amos did not move. Outside the village was dancing. Inside the altar was tilting. That night, Amos walked into the dark chapel, laid his hands on the marble steps and whispered, Let the earth beneath this lie tremble. Let no vow be spoken over stolen names. And the wind answered, not with noise, but with silence so deep, it felt like the ground itself was holding its breath. The next evening, beneath the orange sky of Omidu, Pastor Amos summoned the couple privately. The chapel was quiet, dressed in twilight. Candlelight flickered across gold-trimmed walls. The world outside still believed the fairy tale, but inside these walls, a man was about to be weighed. Amos offered them seats. He did not confront, he observed. Tell me again, he said warmly. How did you two reconnect? Kim beamed. A mutual friend posted an old photo. He saw it. He reached out. Amos nodded. And you, Faye, what was your favorite spot to play as children in Omidu? Faye laughed, brushing his knee. Ah, Pastor. It's been ages, but yes, we used to play near the big fountain in Bodija. Kim giggled. The one behind Auntie Bola's old Pastor Amos smiled gently. There was no fountain in Bodija during their childhood. Only a dry well. Only silence. Another stone in his basket of unease. Before he could ask more, Kem touched Faye's arm. Pastor, some memories are gone. What matters is now. Amos nodded, but what mattered to Kem was not what mattered to truth. She was blind in love. And Faye, whoever he truly was hiding behind that blindness like a boy beneath his mother's wrapper. When they left, Pastor Amos locked the chapel with trembling hands. He stared up at the black sky. No star, only wind. He whispered not with fear, but with authority. Father, if this altar becomes a tombstone for love, let it crack before morning. Let every lie dig its own grave. And behind him, the candle nearest the pulpit flickered violently. As if something unseen had walked too close, the wedding day arrived cloaked in gold. From the hills to the stream, Omadou danced. Chariots lined the church road. Black Benzes, long Lexus cars, a whisper of old money and new secrets. Men adjusted agburdas. Women floated like silk over stone. They came to watch dreams kiss reality. Inside the church pulsed with beauty. Flowers curved around pillars. The air was thick with perfume and prophecy, and in the center stood Faye, still, composed. But Pastor Amos watched his eyes that scanned the crowd not in joy but in fear, eyes that waited for someone to rise, someone who knew, someone who remembered the truth. He clutched Kem's hand too tightly when she arrived. She smiled at him like sunrise on dry land, but his smile cracked at the edges. The ceremony began. Prayers, songs, blessings from old men with thick accents and thicker wallets. Then came the moment. Pastor Amos lifted his Bible. His voice filled the church. If any soul here knows a reason why these two should not be joined, speak now. Time paused. Or forever hold your peace. For 3 seconds the church held its breath. Then a chair scraped. Slow, loud, final. Heads turned, mouths parted. It was Baba Adabier, old, trembling, fierce. He pointed one shaking finger at the groom. That man is not my nephew. Gasps rippled like thunder over still water. Kem turned, her veil trembling. Faye's hands stiffened. Pastor Amos did not speak. Not yet. He simply bowed his head. He had prayed for this, feared this. And now the altar had opened. The first mask had cracked. And soon beneath the satin, beneath the suit, someone else's name would begin to burn. The church fell into silence so heavy it bent the air. Kem stood frozen, fingers locked in a stranger's grip. Her lips parted, but no words came. The veil floated like a ghost around her face. Pastor Amos stepped forward, not with anger but with the quiet force of a river before a flood. Brother, Faye, he said gently. The elder says you are not who you claim. Is there something you must speak before the vows become chains? Faye's lips twitched. Pastor, this is madness. The old man's memory is broken. I'm Faye Adabazio, childhood friend, London scholar. This is my life, my love. Please, don't ruin this. But his voice lacked spine. His words dripped. And the room leaned forward. Pastor Amos kept his eyes steady. Then let peace speak through proof. The birthmark behind your ear. The star. Show us. The groom stiffened. Every soul in the church watched. Faye laughed nervously. I had it removed. I didn't like it. Ugly thing. Murmurs rippled. Who removes a birthmark behind the ear? Who hides from blood? Pastor Amos took one quiet step forward. Let us see. If the star is gone, let the scar testify. Faye hesitated. His fingers hovered behind his ear. And then he turned. Nothing. Smooth skin. No mark. No scar. No truth. The gasp that followed shook the pews. His shoulders collapsed. He fell to his knees. Not in prayer, but in surrender. My name is not Faye, he whispered. My name is Chinedu Nos. The name dropped like a stone in a still pond. Kem stepped back. The veil slipped off her face. Chinedu raised his head. I never meant to hurt her. But even lies spoken with tears still poison the heart. And the altar, once a place of promise, now held the bones of betrayal. The name Chinedu rolled through Omidu like a dust storm, dry, choking, blinding. He remained kneeling at the altar, shoulders sagging, a silhouette of regret. But regret is not repentance, and silence is not forgiveness. Pastor Amos stood like an ancient tree, unmoving, watching. Spiff, he said softly, tell the truth. All of it. Chinedu's voice cracked. Fame was real. He was my friend. We met in university abroad. He had everything. Wealth, family. A girl he never stopped talking about. Kem. But he died. Gasps again. Even the candles seemed to sway. He died in a car crash. I held his hand as he left this world. He asked me to carry him forward, to protect her, to be his memory. Lies bloom like flowers in chaos, and Pastor Amos smelled wilted petals beneath every word. Chinedu's face twisted with emotion. I came back. I found her. I used his pictures, his voice, his past. I thought if I could just live his life, it would be mine too. Kem clutched her chest. He loved you, Chinedu said. I tried to honor that. I studied your childhood. Read every message. I wasn't trying to steal. I was trying to keep his love alive. But Pastor Amos, with eyes that had buried many truths, asked, and the money, the inheritance, the wedding timed with the release of her trust fund. Chinedu lowered his head, and that was answer enough. Outside, the crowd that once came for blessings now whispered curses behind painted fans. Kem turned away, not in rage, but in sorrow, so deep it silenced even the wind. The man she loved had never existed. Only the story did, and that too was made of ash. The sanctuary held its breath. Then, Chinedu bolted. Like a shadow fleeing fire, he dashed toward the chapel doors. Chairs fell. Guests shouted. One of Kem's aunties screamed. But two silent men rose from the edge of the congregation. Men planted there on Pastor Amos's private instruction. They moved fast, like trained wolves, in Sunday suits. They seized Chinedu mid-run, his feet sliding helplessly across the polished floor. No more running, one muttered. Chinedu thrashed. Let me go. I told the truth. But the truth was too late. Truth is only salvation before the breaking. Afterward it becomes sentencing. They dragged him down the aisle, past the flowers, now wilting, past the altar where lies had once dared kneel. Guests parted. Some wept. Some hissed. Kem stood still as marble. Her father, Chief Adarami, moved beside her, placing a palm on her shoulder. But her pain was her own. She did not collapse. She did not scream. She simply breathed, and each breath was harder than the last. As Chinedu was led out, Pastor Amos lowered his Bible. Behind him, the cross above the altar glinted, not in triumph, but in grief. The man who would have stolen a life had been stopped, but the girl who had offered hers so freely was now left with nothing but silence. The wedding guests, left in whispers, no music played. The ribboned cars drove away without honking, and somewhere beyond the hills, thunder grumbled for no reason. The sky, too, was mourning. Pastor Amos sat alone, that evening in his office, hands folded. He did not feel victorious. He only felt the weight of one girl's shattered hope. He whispered, "You did not fail, Lord. You saved her. Even broken truth is better than beautiful lies." And in the distance, a single bell rang, not for a wedding, but for a beginning. Dumanu did not sleep for days. News spread faster than the harm itself, from traders in the red market to schoolchildren chasing goats. Everyone had heard. The rich girl was fooled at the altar. They didn't whisper it with cruelty. They whispered it like thunder, too stunned to look away. Ken stayed indoors for 3 days. No screams, no visitors, no makeup. Only her thoughts, like thorny vines wrapping tighter every hour. The dress still hung in the corner, white, untouched, a ghost of a day that never truly came. She touched the red string bracelet, still on her wrist, still tied to a name that never belonged to the man who wore it. She could still hear Chinidu's voice, the way he said he tried to love her, the way he said he deserved the life she offered. But love does not borrow masks. It shows its scars. Kem sat on the cold floor of her bedroom and let herself break. She didn't wipe the tears, she counted them. Each one was a question. Why didn't I see? Why did I ignore the small lies? Why did I fall so easily? But brokenness is never a full stop. It is the pause before breath returns, and in the quiet of the fourth night, Kem stood. She packed the dress. She folded the veil. She lit a candle before her mirror and whispered, "You were lied to, but you are still whole. They stole a moment, not your spirit." Outside her window, the neem tree stood tall, unbothered. It had seen droughts and fires. And still it grew. So would she. The next Sunday, Christ Our Light Chapel overflowed. Not for spectacle, for truth. They came not with curiosity, but with reverence. For the pastor, who stopped a wedding. For the girl who stood like a mountain, while her world cracked. For the village that remembered what wisdom sounded like. Pastor Amos wore white, not for celebration, but as armor. He opened his Bible slowly. "Discernment is not suspicion," he said, voice rich and slow. "It is a gift, and when your spirit stirs, listen." Heads nodded, eyes burned. He continued, "Love built on lies is like yam boiled in river water. It may look sweet, but it poisons." A soft murmur of agreement swelled like gentle thunder. "Some of you judge the girl," Amos said, gaze cutting through painted faces. "You said she was blinded by love. But tell me, what kind of heart loves halfway? What kind of soul fears too much trust?" No answer, just silence. He closed the book. "To those who carry wounds hidden in wedding gowns, know this: God does not let lies settle forever. They rise, and when they rise, they shatter. But broken glass still reflects the sun." The chapel erupted in soft amen. From the back row, Kem sat quietly, her face bare, her presence strong. She had not left Omidu. She had not flown to London, or Paris, or Lagos. She had stayed, and the village, ashamed of its gossip, now looked at her differently, not as the girl who was fooled, but as the girl who survived. After the service, an old woman pressed a piece of kola nut into Kem's palm. "Your tears have watered the land," she said. "Now watch what grows." Kem smiled, not with joy, but with readiness. 3 moons passed. Omidu moved on, half limping, half dancing. But Kem did not sleepwalk through her grief. She gave it voice. She gave it purpose. She founded the Light Foundation, a place where women came not to cry, but to learn, not to lick wounds, but to protect their daughters from them. Her first event was held under the same neem tree where she once played with the boy she thought was Faye. This time she stood with a microphone and fire in her chest. "I ignored signs," she said, "because I wanted to believe in something beautiful. But beauty is not always true, and truth is never scared of light." Women wept quietly, not from pity, but from recognition. "We must teach our girls that love is not blind," Kem continued. "It must see, it must question, it must know before it promises." The foundation grew faster than expected. Newspapers ran headlines like "From Bride to Warrior." Pastor Amos smiled gently when he read the stories. He knew it wasn't headlines that mattered. It was healing. Kem visited schools, spoke to young girls, partnered with lawyers and midwives. She gave talks on financial control, digital traps, family pressure. She wore her scars like fabric, visible, woven, proud. One day, After a seminar, a girl approached her, maybe 17, eyes heavy with something familiar. "Did it ever stop hurting?" she asked. Kem knelt, touched her hand. "No, but it stopped defining me, and sometimes that is enough." That night, she returned home, removed her heels, and sat by the window. She looked out at the dark, unmoving street. The wind blew softly. She whispered to the night, "I am not waiting for love, but if it comes again, it will knock without disguise." And somewhere beyond the sleeping rooftops, fate began to stir. It began with a stumble. Kem had gone to St. Mercy Hospital with her team to donate books and supplies. She wore a plain white blouse, jeans, and sandals. No lipstick, no armor, just herself. As she lifted a box filled with textbooks, her foot caught on a loose stone. The box tumbled, and a hand caught it. "Careful," said a soft voice. She looked up. He was tall, not striking, but solid. His eyes didn't search for recognition. His smile wasn't for charm, just kindness. "I'm Daniel," he said, shifting the box easily in his arms. "I volunteer here part-time." "Thank you," she said, brushing dust off her palms. They walked together toward the children's ward, talked about books, about laughter, about healing. He asked nothing of her, not who she was, not what had happened, only what she believed in now. Later, when he reached into his pocket to check the time, she noticed he wasn't wearing a watch. He smiled sheepishly. "I lost it. Time doesn't matter much around here anyway. The kids are my clock." She laughed, not politely, but from a place she hadn't visited in months, and something small, a seed, settled quietly in her chest. Not love, not yet, but peace. That night, she wrote in her journal for the first time since the wedding. "I met someone who doesn't carry mirrors, only light." Outside, the moon was full, and in its silver silence, something shifted, not loudly, but with a quiet rhythm of healing that no longer asks permission. Weeks passed. Daniel became a name her heart no longer flinched from. He never arrived with flowers, only presence. He spoke to children like they mattered, helped clean wounds without gloves, listened to grandmothers who talked in circles. He was not performance, he was practice. And Kem, who had once memorized lies, began learning him like scripture. She watched how he never interrupted silence, how he paused before answering, how he never asked about her past, unless she gave it freely. One day, they sat, under the neem tree again, her sacred place of beginnings and endings. "I've never asked," he said, voice low. "But if it's not too painful, what happened to you that day?" She looked at him, not to search for reaction, but to see if he could hold the truth without shaping it. So she told him, all of it. The fake name, the lies, the almost marriage, the unraveling. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't offer empty wisdom, only this. Some people run from the fire, some people are born from it. Kem didn't answer. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Just for a moment, and for once, the neem tree did not whisper about what was lost, only what could still be grown. Later that week, a volunteer whispered to her, "He's been sleeping on the hospital floor for months, gave up his apartment to support a child's surgery, said comfort could wait." And Kem felt her chest bloom, not from rescue, but from recognition. She did not ask if he loved her, she asked if he wanted to walk with her. No promises, just presence. Daniel smiled, always, and that was the only yes she needed. But peace never comes unchallenged. The week after Kem spoke at the National Women's Forum, a letter arrived, unmarked, no return address, just her name, in sharp, angular strokes. Inside, a photograph, faded, torn at the edges. It showed Chenedu, in handcuffs, speaking to a journalist. The headline, "I regret nothing. I loved her in my own way." Kem dropped the paper, Her stomach curled, not from fear, from fury. She had buried the ache. But wounds do not vanish. They sleep, until something taps their name. She walked outside barefoot, the red earth warm under her soles. The sky above Omidu burned gold. The neem tree watched her as if waiting. She sat beneath it, silent. The past always leaves fingerprints, she thought, even if the hand is gone. Later, she showed Daniel the letter. He did not ask questions. He did not gasp. He only said, "Pain knocks to see if you've left the door unlocked." Kem folded the photo and burned it. No ritual, just release. She turned to Daniel. "If he ever comes back, I won't be afraid." Daniel nodded. "You won't need to be." That evening, they walked through the market like ordinary people. Nobody whispered anymore. She was no longer the girl who was fooled. She was the woman who was still standing. And as they turned toward the path that led back home, Kem whispered something to herself. "Let him come. Let the past test me again. I will not break." And the wind, wild and warm, carried her defiance across the fields. Unseen, but not unfelt. The prison was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that rests, but the kind that watches. Kem stood in front of the glass, her scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Not for warmth, for strength. On the other side, Chendu sat. No cuffs now, just eyes swollen with time. He looked thinner but not broken. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice muffled by the glass, and years. Kem said nothing. He shifted. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I stole more than a name. I stole moments, futures, trust." She still did not speak, he continued. "But you should know, I never planned to fall for you." That made her laugh. Not loudly, but bitter, sharp. "Love does not grow in lies," she said finally, voice cold as riverstone. Chendu nodded slowly. "Still, I wanted you to know, you changed me." She stood. "I did not come to change you. I came to close the door." He opened his mouth, but she was already walking away. As she reached the exit, a guard nodded respectfully. No one laughed at her anymore. No one pitied her. They watched her like you watch a tree that survived lightning, scarred but taller. Outside, Daniel waited. He didn't ask what was said. She didn't offer. They walked in silence, and as they passed the gates, the sun flared behind her like a crown of quiet fire. The press caught wind of her visit. Cameras waited. Voices clawed at her peace like wolves behind fences. "Kem, do you forgive him? Kem, are you in love again? Kem, will you marry the hospital volunteer?" She smiled softly, but did not speak. Some truths are not for microphones. At the Light Foundation she gathered her staff and told them, "We will not comment. We will only continue." And they did. She launched a scholarship fund for girls who had survived forced marriage, donated books to prison libraries, hosted classes on emotional resilience. Not because she wanted applause, because silence had once swallowed her, and she had clawed her way out. Daniel remained by her side, not as a crutch, but as soil, always present, always quiet. One evening, under the neem tree, Daniel held her hand gently. "I had a dream," he said, "that we built something here. A school, not just for girls but for truth." Kem smiled. "Truth doesn't need buildings, but children do," he replied. She nodded. The next morning, she drew sketches, made calls, reached out to women who had once wept in her seminars, and now stood tall. They would build something, not in spite of the storm, because of it. And when the first stone was laid, Kem knelt beside it. She whispered, "I am not the girl who was left. I am the woman who stayed." And for the first time, in months, the neem tree dropped, a leaf beside her hand. A sign, a blessing, a beginning. It didn't come with roses, or candles, or a violin beneath the moon. It came in dust, In sunlight, in sweat, Daniel stood at the edge of the school foundation. His shirt was stained. His hands carried the scent of wet cement. Kem walked toward him, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. They met beneath the tree. Again. Always here. He didn't kneel. He didn't ask. He simply held out a small, carved wooden ring. Plain, imperfect, like stories born in fire. "I'm not offering a fairy tale," he said. "I'm offering real mornings. Honest. Work. Shared water. Words that never wear masks." She stared at the ring, then at him, then at the land around them. Still healing, still holy. She took it, not with trembling, not with music, with breath. A steady inhale that tasted of earth and arrival. "Yes," she whispered, not for a crowd, not for applause, for herself. Later that evening, Pastor Amos would sit with his old Bible and smile at the message she sent. This time, there are no lies, only soil, sky, and a man who plants trees. And the old pastor would close his eyes and whisper, "Thank you, because some stories don't need redemption, they need roots." And Kem had finally found her ban. They did not print invitations, no gold leaf envelopes, no trumpet fanfare, no tabloids waiting for a headline. Kem and Daniel married beneath the neem tree, barefoot, surrounded by children whose laughter had stitched her spirit back together. Pastor Amos officiated. No pulpit, just presence. He stood between them, palms open, Bible in hand, voice steady. "This is not a beginning," he said. "This is a continuation of growth, of truth, of choosing each other, not once, but always." Kem wore a simple wrap skirt of ivory cloth. Daniel wore his volunteer shirt, freshly washed, tucked in. Their rings were made of the same wood used to build the foundation of the new school. Imperfect, strong, honest. They said no vows, just eyes locked, hands held. The air was thick with sunlight and quiet joy. No makeup could have made her more beautiful. No diamond could have said more than the small smile Daniel wore as he whispered, "Thank you for not running." And she replied, "Thank you for arriving without a mask." The guests clapped, not loudly, but warmly. The neem tree dropped 2 leaves, and for the first time since her heart broke, Kem cried again, not from grief, from gratitude. Later that night, the couple sat on a bench beside the tree. No candles, no gowns, just stars, and the sound of peace breathing around them. Kem rested her head on Daniel's shoulder. She said, "I am not waiting to be rescued anymore." Daniel answered, "You never needed it." And above them, the sky cracked open with the quiet roar of a future unafraid of storms. Years later, the neem tree grew taller. So did the school beside it. The village of Maidu called it Kem's light, not because of her pain, but because of what she planted from it. Children came from far and wide, some with scars, some with silence. All of them left stronger. Kem no longer wore pain as a badge. She wore it as soil, something she had grown through. Women visited the foundation every month. Some brought daughters, some brought their own shattered selves. All left knowing healing is not forgetting. It is remembering without bleeding. Daniel became more than her husband. He became her witness, the one who stood still while she rebuilt. One evening, as the wind danced through the trees and the stars blinked lazily overhead, Kem sat with her daughter under the neem tree. The girl, no older than 6, played with a string bracelet her mother had kept all these years. "Mama," she asked, "why is this so old?" Kem smiled. "Because it belonged to a lie that taught me the truth." The girl didn't understand, not yet. But one day she would. One day she would know that her mother was once the girl who was almost lost, almost fooled, almost erased, but instead she became the root. Kem stood scooping her child into her arms. and as they walked back toward the house, the neem tree dropped another leaf, soft, slow, sacred, because the story was no longer about the pain. It was about the choice to stay planted and to grow, even after fire, even after betrayal, even after being shattered. Kim had not just survived, she had become the soil. If this heart-touching story moved you, don't let it be the last. Like, share and subscribe to my channel and keep the emotions flowing. Another heart-touching story is ready for you to listen and enjoy.